Violence? It's the police. Hey, those of you in the media and politicians who want to talk about violence and the protests, instead of keeping the focus where it should be, on the murder of George Floyd, on top of all the other murders by police. Why don't you go preach to the police about violence? They're the ones brutalizing, terrorizing, and murdering people time after time. And how about arresting all these killer pigs and charging them with what they are guilty of? Murder of the most depraved kind.
Welcome to the RNL Revolution Nothing Less Show. This is episode number 48 on April 15th, 2021. My name is Andy Zee. I'm the host of the show, coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Before we even put up the title of our show today, we put up the photographs of two human beings, Daunte Wright and George Floyd. Two people whose humanity was stolen from them by these goddamn police who consider black, brown, and native people as less than human. Millions of people have been watching, endured is perhaps a better word, the trial of Derek Chauvin, where over and over and over again, the murder video has been played and we've had to witness Chauvin's total inhumanity, his absolute lack of empathy, that cold-blooded, half-vacant stare that reeks of an ill-founded, self-satisfied white supremacist sneer as he pushed the life and the breath out of George Floyd. Then just a few miles away, yet another wanton, cold-blooded murder of a young black man, 20 years old, Daunte Wright. Murdered point blank as he sat in his car with the killer cop claiming that she thought her Glock was a taser. This was a pig who trained other cops. That day, the police chief said it was a mistake. No, that the very person who trains the police did this as an indictment of the whole police force and every police force. This is training in repression and suppression and oppression against the masses of people that these police carry out their role to serve and protect this capitalist imperialist system from the masses of people, to enforce white supremacy. No, this wasn't a mistake. Not when police murder happens over and over again. Then, in the opening of our show, we heard the revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian, BA, whose leadership and work guides the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show, speak the truth about this violence and who are the real perpetrators of this violence and who should really be on trial and convicted over and over again. Bob Avakian spoke these words last summer. And then what did President Biden do on Tuesday after the murder of Daunte Wright? What did he say? He said, quote, "I want to make it clear again that there is absolutely no justification, none, for looting, no justification for violence," end quote. President Biden. Who is this giving a green light to? And for what? Well, the world saw the answer on Tuesday night. For the police, that's who got a green light to shoot rubber bullets, stun grenades, tear gas, at masses of people of all nationalities who are out in the streets just demanding justice and saying this has to stop. My God, George Floyd's girlfriend reportedly was a teacher of Daunte Wright. Think about this, the threads, the pain that's coursing through this community, in every black community, where everybody knows somebody, no different than in the days of Jim Crow, where everybody knew of somebody who was lynched. This has to end, and it's not going to end without a revolution. This is systematic terror directed at black people from the foundation of this country, a white supremacy that is wrapped thread by thread into the capitalist imperialist system. As Bob Avakian has said over and over again in his lifetime of fighting against the oppression of black people, showing us and leading us in how the liberation of black people is tied completely into the necessity for and the basis for revolution to not just liberate black people, but to emancipate all of humanity. 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 Merriam-Webster defines humanity as compassionate, sympathetic, or generous behavior or disposition, the quality or state of being humane, which it defines as caring for other people in life. This system of capitalism-imperialism makes that impossible for the vast majority of people in the world. That's why we are advocating for, and we are out to organize for, the complete overthrow of this system and its replacement of a new society based on the Constitution for a new socialist republic in North America that's been written by Bob Avakian. Later in this show, we're going to hear from Carl Dix, a follower of Bob Avakian, a revolutionary for decades, interviewed by Lenny Wolff. And they're going to speak about all of this later in today's show. But the focus and beginning of our program today of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show is the declaration, the call to get organized now for an actual revolution put out by the Revcoms, which is a movement of followers of Bob Avakian who are working today to organize you and to involve you in organizing many more people of different nationalities, genders, and ages into the Revolution Club. And today's show is going to feature a discussion that I'm going to have with 3 of the Revcoms, getting into what you, what we, what many more people need to do now to accelerate bringing forward the people and the forces for this real, actual revolution. But just to return to the inhumanity of this system and its enforcers and the potential for humanity to really flourish, and doing so in harmony with the natural world. This declaration, this call to get organized for an actual revolution now, is the centerpiece of Revolutionary May Day 2021, gatherings that are going to take place in just over 2 weeks. And on May 1st this year, we're going to declare we are human beings and we refuse to accept slavery in any form. And there is a plan to make that refusal real. So before we begin this segment, I want to welcome my co-host, Sunsara Taylor. So your thoughts and what's coming up for the rest of the show?
Andy, it's good to be with you. That slogan, "We are human beings, and we refuse to accept slavery in any form." It speaks to my heart. I think it is something that people need to hear and manifest. And I just want to welcome all of our new viewers today, everybody who is returning to the RNL show. These are serious times. And throughout this show today, throughout this episode, you're going to get a lot of understanding that you need, scientific and revolutionary understanding of this moment and how we seize on it to advance the only solution there is, a revolution and the way out. But also you're going to find an invitation and ways to get active today. The 2 main segments that we're going to bring you, the centerpieces of today's episode, are, as Andy mentioned, a conversation with Andy and several members of the Revolution Tour about this May Day and the declaration from the Revcoms, a call to get organized now for a real revolution. So this is going to be bringing that alive and inviting you in. And then we're going to look really honestly at the very painful reality of what we see playing out yet again in the trial of Derek Chauvin, the confrontation with this murder of George Floyd and the murder of Daunte Wright you were speaking of. We're going to have Lenny Wolff back on our show, hosting once again. He's one of the leaders in the Get Organized for an Actual Revolution tour. He's going to be interviewing Carl Dix, who is a longtime follower of Bob Avakian and a fighter for revolution, and somebody who has really been on the front lines of the fight against police murder and brutality. And they're going to get into this case. So we'll bring a couple other pieces with that. We'll have a shorter interview that I did with Gabriel Black Elk, who is a member of Native Lives Matter. He's on the ground in Minneapolis. His brother was killed by police, and we'll get a feel from him on the street there. A couple other things we'll share with you along the way. And then we're going to close out this episode with a really important piece that Bob Avakian issued last summer in the middle of the rising of protest, but very, very relevant now, called Nothing Less. So we got a packed show, a great show. I think we should dive right into it. with this conversation you had with members of the Revolution Tour on May Day.
And we're going to start with the declaration and call. From the Revcoms, a declaration, a call to get organized now for a real revolution.
Let's get down to basics. We need a revolution, nothing less.
To everyone who can't stand this world the way it is, who is sick and tired of so many people being treated as less than human,
who knows that the claim of liberty and justice for all is a cruel lie, who is righteously enraged that injustice and inequality go on and on and on, despite false promises and honeyed words from people in power or those seeking power.
Everyone who agonizes about where things are headed and the fact that to be young now means being denied a decent future or any future at all. Everyone who has dreamed about something much better or even wondered whether that is possible.
Everyone who hungers for a world without oppression, exploitation, poverty, and the destruction of the environment. Everyone who has a heart to fight for something that is truly worth fighting for. You need to be part of this revolution.
This revolution is not just a good idea. It is actually possible.
Is this for real? Are we serious about this, and can we back it up? Yes. We are not here to repeat garbage that may be popular, or to spread the lies we are constantly told by the people in power and their mouthpieces in the media and elsewhere. We are here to bring the truth. So here are some basic truths that we need to understand and live by. Number 1, the system we live under, the system of capitalism-imperialism, destroys lives and crushes spirits. It is the source of endless horrors for the majority of people in this country and all around the world, and it is increasingly threatening the very existence of humanity. The military of this country is not carrying out an honorable service, and it is not some badass force that people should respect. It is doing the same thing around the world on a massive scale that the police are doing here, carrying out the cowardly killing and terrorizing of people in the service of the biggest oppressors in the world, the rulers of this country, and it is a major cause of the destruction of the environment. It is a hard but basic truth for the masses of people, and ultimately for humanity as a whole. There is no future, or no future worth living, under this system.
But there is a way to a world and to a future that is worth living and worth fighting for right now. Revolution. A real revolution. Not playing around with a few changes that leave this system in place and in power, while benefiting only a small number. A revolution means a force of millions, drawn from many different parts of society and organized for an all-out fight to overthrow this system and replace it with a radically different and much better economic and political system, a socialist system, based on meeting the needs of the people and carrying forward the fight for a communist world where there will finally be an end everywhere to the exploitation, oppression, and destruction of the environment that is built into this system of capitalism-imperialism. Anything less than this revolution will completely fail to deal with the root of the problems or lead to the actual solution.
Number 2, revolutions are not possible all the time, but are generally possible only in rare times and circumstances, especially in a powerful country like this. This is one of those rare times and circumstances. This system is in real trouble, caught up in crisis and conflicts for which it has no easy or lasting solutions. Throughout this country, the workings of this system have given rise to deep divisions which cannot be resolved under this system. Society is being ripped apart. Those who rule are locked in bitter fight among themselves, and they cannot hold things together in the way they have in the past. Although there are a lot of bad things connected with this, and it could lead to something really terrible, it is also possible that we could wrench something really positive out of this revolution to put an end to this system and bring something much better into being. So we just heard a declaration, a call to get organized now for a real revolution. We heard the beginning of it, part 1, and beginning of part 2. We'll get into some of the rest of it in a conversation I'm about to have with people. But look, this is a sharp analysis here that says revolutions are not possible all the time, but are generally possible only in rare times and circumstances, especially in a powerful country like this. This is one of those rare times and circumstances. The system is in real trouble, caught up in crisis and conflicts for which it has no easy or lasting solutions. For the last year, we've been talking about the sharp conflict up on top, with the Democrats with their honeyed words that continually run into the actual workings of this system. They can talk about equality, they talk about being for the immigrants, but yet they have no answer to that problem. They have no answer for why the police keep killing people. They have no answer to the environment that's going to actually save this planet. But they're arrayed in a very sharp struggle against these fascists who threaten to really accelerate the extinction of humanity. An open, xenophobic, racist, white supremacist, patriarchal society, open, brutal dictatorship, as opposed to the disguised dictatorship of the Democrats. But these people are fighting up against each other. And that was an extremely negative situation, which still presents as the Republicans, these fascists, are still organizing. But look, that they're fighting up at the top, and we've been emphasizing the negative of that. But there's also within that a positive in the fact that they're doing that. And the question is, what are we doing? Number one. And number two, that they are doing that reveals to more and more people the actual nature of the system, where it has the potential to reveal that. So we got to get busy. We got to get busy right now. This time needs to be our time. It can't be time that we squander. On May 1st, May Day, we're saying we are human beings. We refuse to accept slavery in any form. And at the center of May 1st this year will be this declaration, a call to get organized now for a real revolution. So I'm here with Noche Diaz, a spokesperson for the Revolution Clubs, and you can see him or hear him every week, I guess both, on a Zoom call, National Revolution Club Zoom calls. Andy Zee, who's been an organizer with the Get Organized for an Actual Revolution tour, where a lot of us are right now are in Los Angeles trying to bring forward an organized force to really get this revolution up to a different level. And our own Pete in the Street is now taking a seat at the table here to talk about how we're going to get organized now for an actual revolution. So, look, I want to start, guys, with this great gap that's identified. I talked about it's in the declaration, the call, between this moment that presents itself now, a rare moment when it might be possible to make a revolution if we bring forward a force that can actually be that opposing force representing the interests of the people for fundamental change, overthrowing this system. That gap between what that's all about and the leadership we have in Bob Avakian that is a different way to understand and the world, to be able to change it, a more scientific approach to that. It's developed a strategy, a vision for a whole radically new world. All of this is a tremendous strengths of the revolution, but we don't have enough people. We're not trying to hide anything. We're speaking the truth here. We have very few people relative to what's necessary to even get this thing going. What's necessary is a few thousand people organized behind this, and then from there we can go to really impacting society on a different level and bringing forward the forces we need to really make a revolution as the situation develops. So what I wanted to do is just open it up to discuss this contradiction, this great gap, and how May 1st is a launching pad for just that.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, to start, it's very important. Like people, we gotta tell folks this is a gap. This is a problem, right? Is that not enough people know about this revolution and its leadership. We know that, and we're changing it now. Okay, this is why you need to be part of working on this too. Okay, because like you were outlining before, these are unusual times when what's not normally possible becomes possible, but that's not going to be automatic. It's not going to just fall into our laps. And there's a lot of people, this is the other side of that problem, is that there are a lot of people who are agonizing over why even as this cop is on trial in Minneapolis, they can shoot down another black man just a few miles from there, and nothing seems to end this endless cycle. Why, the environment, they've been fighting over Paris Accord, not Paris, but even that has nothing to do with how to, save the planet. Why can't none of this be solved? Well, we got the answers, okay? And like this declaration goes back to, we need a revolution, nothing less, and we have the leadership for that, which is why we can and need to work on, bridging this gap. But this May 1st has to be a step where we've actually begun to build up some of the scaffolding where you could see that bridge, under construction. And, there's a lot that goes into that, but this is what May 1st is actually part of starting to begin to bring people into, so that they're not only seeing that, but actually working on it and letting people know about this revolution and building up these forces.
We need to be going out to people with this, going out to the neighborhoods, going out to students, really struggling with people, with arms wide open, Too many people right now in the neighborhoods in places like South Central and South Shore, Chicago, this system got them fighting and killing each other, And we got to call that out of like bullshit. We got to actually unite, standing shoulder to shoulder, to overthrow this whole system. There's a source to this madness, to this nightmare, and we got to go to work and get busy on that of making revolution.
I think that's important. I mean, people do care deeply about this system. That's what we've seen in the last year. People who, particularly in the spring after the murder of George Floyd, millions and millions of people took to the street, and it's agonizing now watching them. This defense of the cop, stripping his humanity away. That's why we put his picture up at the top of this show along with Daunte Wright. These are human beings. But this is an inhuman system, and it can't be anything other than that. And we have to bring forward that it is actually rooted in a system. It's not that the morality is important, but you have to understand what gives rise to the morality of dog eat dog, everyone out for themselves, greed, all this stuff's a product of the system. It could be far different with a different system. And look, this is what you get from Bob Avakian, a much more scientific way of understanding the problem and the solution. And what I'd like to do now is, this declaration, a call to get organized for a real revolution, has three different parts to it. The third part is about Bob Avakian, and I want to just play a little bit of the reading of this with Joe Veal. From Joe Veal. Joe Veal is a follower of Bob Avakian since the mid-1970s, and before that he was in the Black Panther Party, and he was part of the reading. You saw him at the opening of our episode today. But let's just watch this first, and then we can bring in what it means to have this leadership.
Number 3, to make this revolution a reality, we need leadership with the scientific method, the strategy and program that can shine a light through the madness and chaos that this system is constantly creating, and can lead in carving a path forward out of this madness to the radically new world we need. And we have that leadership in Bob Avakian, BA. BA is the architect of a whole new framework for the liberation of all oppressed people and the emancipation of all humanity, the new communism. We are followers of BA, and you need to follow BA too. There has never been a leader like this in this country, and there is no other leader like this in the world now. We cannot afford not to follow this leadership if we ever want to get free and put an end to this madness.
Okay, so that was Joe Veal from the Declaration, a call to get organized now for an actual revolution, speaking about Bob Avakian and what a difference it makes. And, you know, it's a bold assertion that there's never been a leader like that in this, like Bob Avakian in this country, and there's no other leader like this in the world today, and we can't afford not to follow this leadership if we want to get free. Those are bold assertions, but if you think about it for a half a second, there is nobody else who's developed the strategy to actually get rid of the system, a system that exploits and oppresses people and is destroying the planet. A big deal. A strategy to actually overthrow it, which many people, even from the generation of the 60s, have given up on, and is a different society that would get us on the road to human emancipation. So why don't we talk a little bit about why we do this and what's been the response to this and why this is actually a positive factor and what people are going to experience, you know, on May Day and by getting into this and spreading the word of this leadership.
Yeah, that's right. It is bold, and it's supposed to be, okay? You're not supposed to just swallow that and then move on to the next thing, or just, this is what you say to people to get them liking us. It's like, we want people to be thinking about things that they normally don't think about, which is, you know, why are things this way and how they could be totally different. That's what BA has been working on, and, you know, like it says there, it makes a big deal to have something that can shine a light through all the chaos and all the madness. Especially in these times, you know, like we've been talking about, where, you know, the possibilities get even sharper of what we can do to even be able to understand that and to make anything good come out of that. You need leadership, and you got to struggle with people over this. And this is what has happened when we go out there. You know, we've been playing segments from this show about BA on the liberation of Black people. We've been introducing people to the New Year's statement that he put out, and, you know, various other, you know, writings and videos of BA. But again, you know, there's these young guys I was talking to, and they have no idea that somebody came out of that time when people were rising up and didn't, you know, not only just like is still around, but actually is working on all the questions people ran up against, you know, and there's people are just beginning to be introduced to all of this. But again, you know, it makes a big difference that we're not starting from zero. We're not in this situation with no understanding of where to go and what to do with this kind of a situation. The fact that we have this leadership is a strength, not just to, you know, get a couple of people around us, but to get people who are conscious revolutionaries, followers of BA, because they can actually lead this situation into something good and actually be part of running a different society. So this is what we have and what we're doing with this. And, you know, the last thing I'll just say is, you know, you think about what Pete was describing earlier about, you know, what people get caught up in and, you know, the ways of this system that are put on people. And actually, you know, we have not just good ideas and principles, but like we're actually making that real, okay? This is part of the thing of we are followers of BA and you need to be one too, is that these are not just good ideas for people to like or not like. This is actually a revolution that can be made, that's real, that's possible, and that is being led by BA. And, you know, the methods and principles have been developed. But this is being fought for now, okay? And this is what people can actually become, all right? We are the Revcoms, and you can too.
Yeah, I think that's really right. And, you know, look, there's a lot of cynicism and there's a lot of heartbreak about leaders, about movements, about what happens when people stand up and they just run right into the teeth of this system, the brutality of this system, but also the heartbreak of a lot of leaders over the years who've been murdered and who've sold out. So the difference it makes for people to see, you know, BA speaking in 1969, BA speaking in 1976, BA speaking in 2003, BA speaking in 2020, and all at every point, so incredibly sharp, reaching into your heart and challenging you to stop putting up with the bullshit that you swallow every single day of being treated completely, you know, inhuman, of being treated like a thug, like a criminal. and challenging you to step up and become an emancipator of humanity and take responsibility for the future of humanity, that leadership having been tested again, decade after decade, it's what's necessary, and I think it's very important to put straight up to people and for you all to find out about and step into this. But I just think the reality of who this leadership is and that he's leading right now, the palpability of that, it changes everything.
It's a controversial question too. Look, and it's some of the terms of things now. We've been saying to people, okay, yeah, Bob Avakian, he's an older white guy. Get over it. And why? Why should you get over it? Because getting free of this system matters. And if he's done this work, there's actually a way to understand the world that's different than what's come before. And if the criteria for listening to people is what's actually corresponds to reality, what's actually true, that's part of what he's arguing with people to fight for. To fight for it, what's actually true, not what makes you feel good, and not to say what doesn't make you feel good, but to actually deal with what is true. And what's true is that the system could be ended. The people could make a revolution. It is possible. When others have given up, he didn't give up. And it's not just a matter of will. It's a matter actually of understanding how things actually work and how they could actually be different. So these are things that we have to get out and bring to people. And, people are going to learn about it. They're going to learn about it, and we're going to struggle over it. We're going to argue over it in the course of trying to change the world, because there's an opportunity here that should not be squandered. It's not very often you get a chance to have a situation in a powerful country where you could make a revolution. I'd like to just move on a bit to talk about this in relationship to how, in fact, let's get down on the ground, speaking about being truthful. There's scores and hundreds of people who follow this in one way or another, okay? But there's really a small core who's really dedicated to this that has to be expanded now. How does that small core impact society and become a bigger core? What do we have to do? How do we do that? And why do we keep saying that we're trying right now to organize a few thousand people into this movement in an organized way?
Like you were saying, this is going to be an opportunity for people to learn more about this revolution and its leadership, but also come together with others to be part of saying, we refuse to accept slavery in any form. All right, you're actually having people come together to represent, manifest that, become part of getting organized. And everyone who's raising these questions, dreaming about a different world or not thinking about this yet, that starts to actually change what people are doing and thinking about now, right? And you can see, okay, that happens in May 1st on a certain scale, and that's the kind of process you need to get going. It's not the totality of it, but you have some people who are actually beginning to get into something else. This revolution and Bob Avakian and his leadership, they're representing that, and that becomes a challenge for everybody else. And it doesn't solve it, doesn't automatically change everybody, but they go out and they're struggling with people over stop acting in this system way and start getting with this revolution and this fight for a whole different future that can change what people see as possible and necessary, or what they're even thinking about in relationship to that. And then that force is actually then out in society, fighting the power, standing up to the ways of this system and its injustices, its crimes against humanity, and challenging and struggling with people to change their ways to be part of that fight, all part of getting ready for a time when we can actually bring the system down. This is, what we start getting going. So this is what we're getting started with, with this May 1st, gatherings that are happening around the country. Why you need to be there, but also be part of getting other people who want to be part of learning about this and getting down on this and becoming part of that process too.
I think there's a moment right now when we could make some very big progress in this because of what's going on. This verdict is going to come soon, in the next week or so, probably next week, in the trial of the cop who killed George Floyd, Derek Chauvin. There's continuing protests in Brooklyn Center and just outside of in Minneapolis in the murder of Daunte Wright, as we've talked about. And this really poses, how do we, in the midst of this struggle, how do we bring people forward to revolution? There is a sense out there. Oh my fucking God. You're in the middle of this trial and you go shoot somebody else down. People are feeling this. People are feeling this big time, but they don't know the way out. You know, I'm just going to say this. I saw this on CNN last night. This relatively young white guy who was shot with a rubber bullet on his leg, and he was tear gas and all this. And he was just said, this has to stop. This has to stop. But then this reporter from CNN asked him, well, do you agree with defund the police? And which is, you're not going to defund the police under this system in any kind of meaningful way. But he said, well, no, I don't know. We got to make things better. He had no answers, but he was looking for answers. Are we able to go into that and unite with people while struggling with them if there's a way out of this madness? Can we accumulate more people in this situation, bring them what they need, and impact society in that kind of way? How are we going to do this? Let's speak about this in relation to May 1st.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to, and I think everyone you watching are part of that answer, are part of answering yes to that. And come with us, run with us, go out to these demonstrations yourself, go out to all of society, wherever people are feeling this way. And they're feeling this way in a lot of places, but we also then have to, and unite with that, but also bring people the answers. Is not defund the police. No, you can't abolish the police unless you abolish the whole system that requires these police. That's what we have to put our sights to is, and I think on May 1st, this slogan is very important. We refuse to accept slavery in any form. That's the whole world. That's what we have to manifest on May 1st. So I think that there's a need to bring that to people, you all being part of that, and then coming together with that spirit on May 1st.
Okay, so let's bring this home. Let's bring it home to May Day, all right? Pete, who should be at May Day, and what's it going to be? One more time.
Yeah, we want to welcome people who are watching this and people who are not watching this. You got to go out and you got to bring people to this. You're going to meet people like you. And you're going to meet people who are completely not like you. But what we actually have in common is what we want a whole different world, a radically different one than the one we have.
All right.
That's right. Be part of, telling the whole world that we refuse to accept slavery in any form, and we're getting organized for revolution. All right. At the beginning of this, conversation, you started off talking about how these are, not normal times. All right. And these are the times when the future goes, up for grabs. So let's go grab it because we have what we need to actually make something out of it. So let's make a good start, not just for a day, but as a day that's part of getting us somewhere else.
So join with us to grab the future. On May 1st, I just want to let people know that these May Day celebrations, as I understand it, there'll be, in some of these cities, there'll be marches into the parks where May 1st celebrations are going to happen. There'll be presentations. You'll be able to hear speeches and possibly see film clips of Bob Avakian that are going to get you deeper into how we're going to make this revolution and what it's all for. And there'll be picnics and barbecues in different places so that we can break bread and people can get to meet each other and really get down on what this is all about, what it's for, and how you can be a part of it. Go to revcom.us to find out about what's going on in your city. Go to their social media, every place it's the handle at the Revcoms, and you'll be seeing notices from the Rev Clubs in your city. So with that, we'll see you on May 1st. Yeah.
See you there. All right, Andy. Well, listen, I want to thank you for that conversation with Pete and Noche and Annie. I know I'm really looking forward to being out there on May 1st. I hope everybody watching comes out, as Noche said, not just for a powerful day in its own right, which May 1st should be, this internationalist revolutionary holiday, does need to be powerfully marked, but as a powerful day that's part of going somewhere, to actually advance in getting organized for an actual revolution.
Yeah, I thought that that passion, that fire that Noche was bringing to what we have going for us and the possibility of a radically different world is something that has to really be manifest on the 1st of May. People are going to get out. People want to get out, but imagine getting out for revolution. It has to be in a organized and militant way. We have to be able to convey the seriousness of what it is we're beginning. the Revcoms, together with those of you watching and people who we meet in the next 2 weeks and people who are out on that day, we're going to, as I said, in some cities here in LA, we're planning to have a march into the May Day celebration. Other places, it's got to, though, have a very serious element of manifesting that we are getting organized. And so people have to march in unison or do stuff in unison. It's got to have a beat. It's got to have that beat of revolution. We have to show that we're really resolute in what we're trying to do here. And people see that, it gives them a confidence, and they can imagine then the dozens, the scores becoming hundreds and thousands, and what a difference that could make on the situation. Because it's a terribly negative situation out there. But when you see an organized force acting in unison with some discipline to it, but with the right spirit of open arms, then people can imagine those people have a way to go. They have the seriousness of mission, and all of that has to be conveyed. And then, yes, we're going to have a barbecue, a picnic. We're going to get to break bread with each other and meet each other. But if we have this element is going to be at the center of this May Day, along with the revolutionary content that people will hear in speeches and film clips where that's possible to bring about. So I, too, am looking forward to May 1st. And hopefully off of watching today's show, all of you will be making your plans and getting with the Revcoms in your area. So what's up next, Sunsara?
All right, so we're going to move into a series of segments that is speaking more directly to this immediate moment in the trial of Derek Chauvin, which has been punctuated now by this outrageous murder of Daunte Wright by police. The heart of this segment is going to be an interview that was done by Lenny Wolff with Carl Dix, two of our comrades here at the show, both longtime followers of Bob Avakian and fighters for revolution. They're going to talk about this moment and the stakes and how to understand it. We're going to set that up with a series of clips, short excerpts from the trial itself. And we think it's really important that people are up to speed on some of this testimony, searing testimony, and the expert witnesses as well. There's a number of things, so we get a little roundup on that to bring you up to speed on that. And that interview is going to be followed by a shorter piece, an interview that I did with Gabriel Black Elk, who his brother, Paul Castaway, was murdered by police in Denver in 2015. It's a horrible story. He is a member of Native Lives Matter, and he's also on the ground. He lives in Minneapolis. He's been out in the streets. He's going to give us a feel for that. So that's the series of segments we're going to go into. But to set it up, we have a very short piece from Bob Avakian that gets dead on at the heart of what this country has been and what's concentrated in this moment, in this trial. It's called 3 Strikes. So you're going to hear that first, and then we'll go from there.
The Minneapolis cop, Derek Chauvin, is on trial for kneeling on the neck of George Floyd for 9.5 minutes, killing him. As the trial unfolds, this very basic point from Bob Avakian burns in our hearts. From 3 Strikes by Bob Avakian, B.A. This system, in this country, in the whole history of its treatment of Black people, what has it been? First, slavery. Then, Jim Crow, segregation, and Ku Klux Klan terror. And now, the new Jim Crow, police brutality and murder, wholesale criminalization and mass incarceration, and legalized discrimination yet again. That's it for this system. 3 strikes and you're out. Learn more about Bob Avakian and the strategy and goal for an actual revolution. Get with the Revolution Club.
When I look at George Floyd, I look at my dad, I look at my brothers, I look at my cousins, my uncles, because they are all Black. It's been nights I stayed up apologizing and apologizing to George Floyd for not doing more and not physically interacting and not saving his life. But it's like, it's not what I should have done. It's what he should have done.
Stop it, he's breathing right now, bro. You think that's cool? He's not responsive right now, bro.
Yep, I'm demonstrating with my arm, so that's choke, from neck here, and for instance, my neck would be from here, so I would have this across from here, and then I'm closing it off here, pretty much the angle of his knee, and then every time I'm shimmying, I'm getting this right here to close the gap closer within my neck, and it's the same way that you can do without having the neck across here.
What do you want? I can breathe.
They just did it again. They did it again. They did it again.
Bro, get in the car, man. You're definitely a bum, bro.
Tell me what it is. Tell me what his pulse is right now.
Check the pulse.
The fact that you guys are checking his pulse and doing compressions if he needs them.
What's the point of doing chest compressions?
Pumping the blood for somebody that's not doing that themselves, trying to get a pulse back.
And were you able to do that, any of those steps?
No, sir.
Back off!
Why weren't you able to do any of that?
Because the officers didn't let me in to the scene.
Were you frustrated?
Yes.
Would you describe other people's demeanors as upset or angry?
I don't know if you've seen anybody be killed, but it's upsetting.
If your knee is on a person's neck, that can kill him.
What is your, your view of that use of force during that time period?
Totally unnecessary.
Once there was no longer any resistance, and clearly when Mr. Floyd was no longer responsive and even motionless, to continue to apply that level of force to a person proned out, handcuffed behind their back, that in no way, shape, or form is anything that is by policy, it is not part of our training, and it is certainly not part of our ethics or our values.
The law enforcement subdual, restraint, and the neck compression was just more than Mr. Floyd could take.
So they were forcing his left wrist up into his chest, forcing it in tight against his chest, forcing it high up. And you have to keep in mind that the opposite side of this is the street. So he was being squashed between the two sides. And so this meant that he couldn't exert his pump handle, because the street totally blocked his pump handle. There was no way he could do any front to back movement.
There's no evidence to suggest he would have died that night, except for the interactions with law enforcement.
Mr. Floyd's use of fentanyl did not cause the subdual or neck restraint. His heart disease did not cause the subdual or the neck restraint.
Yes, I believe that Mr. George Floyd's death was absolutely preventable.
He always played sports. He loved playing sports with like neighborhood kids or anybody really that would pick up any type of ball or racket. He would play instantly.
That's my mother.
she's no longer with us right now, but that's my oldest brother, George. I miss both of them. He was so much of a leader to us in the household. He would always make sure that we had our clothes for school. He made sure that we all were going to be to school on time. And like I told you, George couldn't cook, but he'll make sure you have a snack or something to get in the morning. And he just was like a person that everybody loved around the community. He just knew how to make people feel better.
We're here, and we will fight for justice for this family, just like we're fighting for our brother. Yeah. To the protesters all around this nation, stand up. Stand up. Come on. We need you all to come out.
Hi, I'm Lenny Wolff. I'm a follower of Bob Avakian, a revolutionary communist, and one of the leaders of the national tour to get organized for an actual revolution. And I'm speaking today with Carl Dix. It has been nearly 1 year since Derek Chauvin, leading a squad of 3 other pigs, slowly and methodically strangled George Floyd to death, as George Floyd himself and a dozen other people pled for George Floyd's life. What was different this time, and what prevented this from being just another justifiable homicide that didn't even go to trial, was the video that went around the world and that drew millions of people into the streets everywhere in this country and all over the world to stand up heroically against police violence of all kinds, including the kind the police were bringing down on the people in the streets. Now this pig Chauvin has been on trial for over 2 weeks. As we're filming, the defense is opening its case, and most observers predict that that case will go to jury sometime next week. To step back on all this, to get a scientific and revolutionary perspective on it, we're going to talk today with Carl Dix, who's a frequent contributor to Revolution Nothing Less. Carl's a follower of Bob Avakian. He's a longtime revolutionary communist, and he founded the October 22nd Coalition against police brutality, repression, and the criminalization of a generation nearly 25 years ago, based on the strategic thinking of Bob Avakian. And he's working for revolution today in a time in which the conflict and contradictions that are tearing this society apart are sharpening up all the time. And the prospects for a real revolution are growing more and more possible every day. So, Carl, to take us through the case, I would like to ask you first, what strikes you after listening to and watching the prosecution's case over these past 2 weeks?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that were really striking. I mean, first was the eyewitness testimony together with the video. And the video of George Floyd's murder, the 9+ minutes that Chauvin's got his knee on George Floyd's neck, was heartrending. And then you heard from people who didn't just watch the video, but some of them took the videos and put it out so that it got out to the world, and how much it hurt them to be there watching the police murder this man, hearing him pleading for his life and being ignored, them pleading for his life and also being ignored as the cops just slowly snuffed the life out of him. You heard from a teenager and her 9-year-old cousin who had to watch this and being sad and kind of mad, they said about it. You heard from a mixed martial artist a guy who knew about some of this stuff, and he said he recognized the hold that Chauvin was putting on Floyd and that it was designed to cut off breath. And he pointed that out to Chauvin as Chauvin was doing it. And then you had an EMT who knew how to give treatment to somebody who was in medical distress, who came and offered to do that and was shoved away by the cops. No, we don't want you to do that. And these people were forced to watch this murder. Another thing that was striking is George Floyd's girlfriend and his brother both testified. And they spoke to what kind of man George Floyd was, and his humanity was brought to bear. What was it that attracted this woman to George Floyd? How they together were struggling with opioid addiction and trying to help each other through it. George Floyd's brother, younger brother, talked about how George taught him and his other brothers how to love their mother and cherish her and relate to her. And this was the life that got snuffed out.
Carl, you're experienced with a lot of cases of police murder. You've been with parents whose children have been murdered by the police. Some of them have never even gotten into court. You yourself have had court cases. Would you say that there's anything unusual about how the prosecution is dealing with this case?
Yeah, I mean, the first unusual thing is that they even got this killer cop on trial. Because look, cops in this country kill about 1,000 people each and every year. And among those thousands of people, each year, several hundred of them, the cops will admit were doing nothing wrong and unarmed when their lives were snuffed out. Yet this system almost never puts a killer cop on trial. I mean, it was striking the way that George Floyd talked about "I can't breathe," but we have heard and seen that before. Eric Garner, back in 2014, we saw a video of him being choked to death and crying out, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe," 11 times. But that video wasn't enough to get that cop put on trial. In fact, the only person who went to jail out of that case was the brother who took the video that documented it and let a lot of people know that this murder went down. The cops hounded him until they got something on him, and he's the one that went to jail. So that's one very unusual thing, that there's even a trial. But also, in the few cases where they do put killer cops on trial, it's almost like the prosecutors forget how to prosecute. They forget how to make a case to try to point to the guilt of this killer cop. Well, that's not what they're doing this time. They are putting together a wealth of evidence from the video, from the eyewitnesses, from medical experts to block the defense's thing that, because the defense is going to argue that that knee that Chauvin put on his neck, on Floyd's neck, and kept there for 9.5 minutes just about, had nothing to do with the fact that he died. They're going to talk about drug use and heart trouble and all this kind of stuff. They cut that, they went at that. And they also had a number of police officials, including some of the higher ups locally there who were Chauvin's superiors, as well as national experts, saying that what Chauvin did to George Floyd was not something that cops are trained to do. It's not policy and all like this. So they're putting together a case to convict him around murder, but they're putting it together in a way to try to make a point that Chauvin was the rare bad apple on an overwhelmingly good police force and overwhelmingly good national police institution. He was the rogue in that. To try to cover over the fact that he's a concentration of a much more widespread problem of brutality and murder that the police all across the country inflict, especially targeting Black people, Latinos, other oppressed people. But this is something that does happen all the time. It happens all across the country. This is not a question of one bad apple that needed to be weeded out, but a rotten barrel. See, and look, I'm going to wrap this point up by going to Basics by Bob Avakian. And look, if you haven't got this book, you need to get it. It's the handbook for revolution. If you want to see this world change, you need to get this book. You need to read it. You need to apply it in trying to change the world. You need to get it to other people and get them reading it too, because we need a revolution, and this book is guidance for that. And let's get to what it says about the role of the police. Chapter 1, number 24. The role of the police is not to serve and protect the people. It is to serve and protect the system that rules over the people, to enforce the relations of exploitation and oppression, the conditions of poverty, misery, and degradation into which the system has cast people and is determined to keep people in. The law and order the police are about, with all of their brutality and murder, is the law and order that enforces all this oppression and madness.
Carl, I really want to underline what you said about this book. This is a book people just shouldn't read. They need to read, and they're going to need to read it. These are heavy times we're entering into, and you're going to need this book, and you're going to need this leader and what he's brought forward and what he's saying to guide you through that, so that we can come out of these times with something that's much, much better, a world where this never happens again. One last thing, Carl. Tell our viewers about Daunte Wright.
Daunte Wright is a 20-year-old black man who was murdered by police over the weekend in Brooklyn Center, which is just a few miles away from Minneapolis, the site of the trial of the pig who murdered George Floyd, and right in the middle of that trial. The pigs pulled him over on some bullshit. They said that he had a expired license plate and air fresheners hanging from his rear view mirror. They get in a struggle with him and they shoot him dead. He was in the car with his girlfriend when they fired on him. And his car crashed. She ended up in the hospital. And people are righteously angry about that and displaying that anger in the streets a couple nights running now. And they're being condemned for violence. All the way up to the top. Joe Biden himself talked about violence is never justified, trying to cut this thing off from what started it, which was the violence of the police in murdering this young black man, and which happens on top of the brutality and murder that these pigs inflict on black people all across the country forever. So people are right to be angry, and it is very righteous for them to stand up and display that anger. And look, I want to say this to the people who are out there and angry, to the people whose hearts are with the people who are out there and angry, to all of the people who were out around George Floyd. You are right. You're doing the right thing. But we got to take this beyond what's been done so far. We got to do something that is going to solve this problem, end this horror that all of us are damn tired of having to suffer. And that something is revolution. And you got to get with the movement for an actual revolution, because there is a force out here that is working and preparing for that revolution, working to enlist people in the movement for this actual revolution. There's not nearly enough of us right now, but we're working to change that. And you got to get involved and become part of changing that, because that's what's needed. And in addition to being needed, it is possible. Our actions last summer and even right now point to the potential for it. We got to throw ourselves into acting to make that real.
Carl, once again, a very important and insightful interview from you. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again here. I want our viewers to stay tuned to this show as this trial continues, and to go to revcom.us every single night to find out more about it.
Gabriel Black Elk became involved in the struggle against police murder after his brother, Paul Castaway, was killed by police in Denver in 2015. I first met him in Minneapolis last summer in the uprising against the police murder of George Floyd. He is a member of Native Lives Matter, which is a grassroots organization run by indigenous families advocating awareness and justice for missing, murdered indigenous relatives and Native lives killed by police violence, past and present. He lives in Minneapolis, and he has been out in the streets protesting during the trial of Derek Chauvin, who murdered George Floyd. Gabriel, welcome to the Revolution Nothing Less show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm really, really glad that you're joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about your brother and what was done to him?
My brother was murdered on July 12, 2015 in Denver, Colorado during a mental health crisis during a wellness check. And my mom is the one that called the police to get my brother help. So the police knew that they were there to help. And so when my brother was coming out of the apartment buildings, the cops showed up and my brother ran. He ran into a trailer park, as you can see on the video. My brother's video is on YouTube. You can see him, he ran into a trailer park, and which they cornered him, and my brother held a kitchen knife to his neck, and he was telling the cops that he was gonna kill himself. And so the cops, the officers, Jerry Lara and Michael Lee Trout, decided to shoot my brother in front of three adults and 18 kids.
I really want to appreciate, one, the pain that you and your family have gone through, that no one should have to go through, but also that you're out there doggedly raising your voice, and that you're on the ground in Minneapolis raising your voice for George Floyd and Daunte Wright. I think it'd be helpful if you talked some about the connection of police terror and violence against Native people and the whole history of this country's violence against Native people.
Like we tell people in the crowds, we've been, our people's been going through this for the past 500 years plus, going through the same, hell over and over throughout all these hundreds and hundreds of years. And it just keeps, for us, it just keeps going. We just see it, it just keeps going, it just keeps going. To us, when we see the police is another form of the U.S. cavalry, because that's who has been, policing our people ever since they pushed us onto the reservations. It's been the police, it was the U.S. cavalry soldiers who turned into police. That's why they stay, that's why we say that's why they stay in blue suits. We say from blue coats to the blue suits. There's no difference. Like what's going on with the trial of Derek Chauvin. We're also yelling out the name of Wayne Reyes. And Wayne Reyes was he was a Native guy here. And Wayne Reyes was also killed by Derek Chauvin.
I wonder if there's any other sense that you can give our viewers of the mood, the feelings that people are that is being expressed, the reaction of the police. We've seen some of it on live TV, but you've been on the ground. I wonder if you could just give us a more vivid sense of it.
It's the mood is very on edge. You know, it's man, there's a lot of pissed off people. The community is just super mad that it just keeps happening. You know, and as it keeps happening, you know, the community is going to react a little bit more each time. And even though I am, you know, in that crowd and with them and protesting with them, I'm also an impacted family. You know, I'm also a justice family. And to us, what a justice family is, you know, someone who loses someone to police. And, you know, now their family is all about fighting for justice. So, you know, with us justice families, it's very disheartening. It's sad. You know, it's, you know, really, it's emotional.
Well, Gabe, I really want to appreciate that you took the time to talk with us. I want to appreciate that you are out in the streets with all the ongoing. Look, I feel you on this, that it's a pain that does not end, and then each new murder by police brings that back again for you, for all the families. But to take that pain and to be in the streets, to raise your voice and to come and talk with us about it is very important. I want to appreciate that. I want to thank you for what you're doing. I want to say to everybody, really feel what you just heard and act on it. Join in with others in raising your voice and in getting serious about putting an end to this. It has to stop. No family should ever have to go through this. So thank you so much, Gabriel, for joining us here on the Revolution Nothing Less show.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, Andy, so we're coming to the end of episode 48. Before we send our viewers off for the night, I want to just mention to you that we watched that interview with Carl and Lenny. And 3 episodes ago, in episode 45, they did an incredible interview once again. And I just want to highlight it for our viewers because this was one where Lenny interviewed Carl about his experience becoming a revolutionary and a follower of Bob Avakian. And they were talking about really the groundbreaking work BA has done in the liberation of Black people, and how deeply this is connected to the fight to emancipate all of humanity and at the core of this revolution that he is leading and advancing. And Carl talks about becoming a revolutionary in Leavenworth Military Prison. And people should know he went to prison for 2 years for refusing to fight in the Vietnam War. And that's a very important example, and it's an example and a stand Carl has followed through on, including right down to today, as you heard that just in this interview. So I just wanted to recommend go back to episode 45. There's a lot to draw from and learn from there.
So thank you, Sunsara. That was an important segment. We're at a rare moment. There's the moment around these trials and these police murders, but there's a bigger moment here. There's a moment that must not be squandered. When the people up top are fighting each other, opens up the possibility for an actual revolution, for a time that people have yearned for, to be free and lift the system off the backs, not just of people in this country, but people all over the world, which is why on May 1st we say, we are human beings. We refuse to accept slavery in any form. So be there on May 1st and get a copy now of what's going to be the centerpiece of this celebration. The message from the Revcoms. A declaration, a call to get organized now for a real revolution. This is the time. We cannot waste it. The future is ours if we seize it.
All right, and so for our very final segment, we've been talking all episode, as we do and should on every episode, about the precious leadership we have in Bob Avakian. This is a man who is on fire with a refusal to accept the way that so many lives are crushed and degraded here in this country and around the world. But this is also somebody who has brought alive a scientific understanding that this is unnecessary, and he's leading us to make it no longer so. So this is a piece he put out last summer in the middle of the beautiful uprising. Millions in the streets. He put out this statement called Nothing Less. It is extremely timely right now as well. Listen to it, feel it, and act on it.
This is Bob Avakian speaking. To all those who have risen up so powerfully and are demonstrating to say no more after the murder of George Floyd and all the other cold-blooded murders by police. To all those who have drawn inspiration from this righteous uprising. To all those who have had the blinders forced from their eyes and have been provoked to think anew about what kind of country it is that we live in. This has raised the biggest questions about what is needed for people everywhere to live fully as human beings. An end to institutionalized racism and murder by police, nothing less. An end to any way people anywhere are used, abused, and brutalized, nothing less. We need a world without white supremacy and male supremacy. A world where no one is regarded as alien. A world without war, where people from all over the globe, with a beautiful flowering of diversity, act together for the common good and are truly caretakers of the earth. This is not just a dream. The possibility for this is being powerfully demonstrated in this uprising of the people, of all different races and genders, from all parts of the world, refusing to remain silent or stay passive while all this oppression and brutality goes on. To make all this real, we need revolution, nothing less. A strategic plan for how to make this revolution, and a sweeping vision and concrete blueprint for a radically different and much better world, where all this can become possible, can be found in the work I have done, including the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America. You can learn more about this revolution and become part of making it a reality by going to revcom.us and joining with the Revcoms. We do not need to live in this world where so much of humanity suffers so unnecessarily under this system of capitalism-imperialism that cannot exist without exploiting and degrading people, suffocating their humanity, and killing them without mercy. We can do much better. Don't listen to talk about how it can never happen. Look around you. What seemed impossible yesterday is happening right now. Revolution. Why should we settle for anything less?